I believe I hit record.
It
It
is.
is recording.
Yep.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Healthy Coping Strategies and Skills. My name is Chelsea Samkata. I'm a clinician on the Youth Behavioral Support Team. And we have Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Dunnick. I am a BCBA with the Health West Autism team. Yeah. And I'm so excited to be here with everyone.
We are very excited. We're going to do a little chatter for like a minute just to make sure if there's anyone else who wants to join Zoom can. For those of you who are joining Zoom, I can, just head to the next slide. It's important that you have patience with us because although Elizabeth and I are, I would like to think, somewhat capable people, Zoom is a new concept. And so it can be challenging. Technology fails us, especially where we're in the hot seat and need it to work properly. So if there are any difficulties, please, 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 um, at the bottom of your screen, if you were to take your mouse and scan over that, there is a chat section. Elizabeth during this time is going to be monitoring that. And so please send any questions. If there is a specific question you only want Elizabeth to see, you are able to select who you are sharing that with. Otherwise, I believe the default is just sent to everyone. And please know there have been many times I send chats and I don't spell things right, or if I read them again, I'm like, that didn't make sense. So we are all going to have patience with each other. The other thing that you'll notice that if you join us on Zoom is that Elizabeth is going to be muting and blacking out the screen for everyone who joins. And so if you join and you see that your screen is blacked out, or that if you're trying to talk to us, we would not be able to hear you because those are muted and we can't see you. We will be recording this. And so that is why we just want to make sure that everyone is as comfortable as possible, and you don't have to worry about having your face up there. Elizabeth and I will worry about what our faces look like.
Here we are.
Yes, yes. And so the other thing that is important to know, and whether you're watching this in the recording or if you are participating in Zoom, we are going to be doing some polls. And so if you are participating in Zoom, we ask that you just fill those out. We're doing them anonymously, so we don't see who answers those. Um, and if you are just viewing this as a recording, if I'm assuming that you would be able to still see the polls. If you are unable to, we apologize again. Patience you must have with us. If you are able to see the polls, you obviously wouldn't be able to participate in this recording, but please answer them. I think it's important that these polls not only give us a glimpse of who you are, and so we can kind of have an understanding of who's watching, but it's also good to know, kind of just check in with yourself. Um, and so I believe we did have another person join. Thank you, Mary Beth. But we're going to continue on this. Again, please feel free to use the chat. If you are watching this on the recording, and if any questions pop up towards the end of this presentation, we do have a contact information for Holly, who is a part of our autism program. And so any questions that come up, or if you would like more resources, please feel free to email her. And we'll keep it going. Sound good, Elizabeth?
Sounds great.
Okay, so our first slide that we're going to go through is identifying who you are. And so we have a few members on Zoom, um, but please take time just to answer this, even if you are someone we may know. It's important to for us just to know who you are. But again, if you're on that recording and you aren't able to participate, think about this for yourself. Who are you, right? Because especially in this time of COVID-19, we wear many hats. And so not only can we be professional, we can be parents, we can be caregivers, we can be the crazy neighbor, we can do a lot of things. And so it's important for us when we think about coping skills and strategies and how to not only help ourselves but help our families. It's good to know, what hats do we have to wear? Who are we? What do we have to do? So I I think, for the people that we have. this might be our polling number. And it looks like most of us here today on Zoom are professionals. And so just even with that term, that can really mean a lot. I think most of us are Health Plus employees. But for those of you who are watching the recording, I would hope that a lot of parents and community members are watching this, because coping skills and strategies are so important to have. And later on, you'll see a ridiculous meme, but we will learn that coping strategies and skills really are for everyone. Let me make sure my slides go. There we go. So we're going to do one more poll, and while Elizabeth is getting that set up, it's, you know, important, and we'll discuss the importance of humor. And so there's the little minion, and it says, do you mean to tell me a stress ball isn't for throwing at people who stress you out? And, you know, of course we do not promote violence, but it is funny because I think often many of us have had those moments where our rational self is set aside and we may want to respond by throwing something at someone. And it's good to see that the individuals on Zoom right now, yes, we have used coping strategies in the past. For those of you who are saying maybe no, that's okay, because sometimes we naturally just do stuff during our day that we don't necessarily know or put that label to as being a coping strategy. And so as we continue through this presentation, you'll see the goal of this presentation is to give everyone kind of a basic understanding of what coping strategies are. And so for some of you, you may say, I already knew this, it's just a refresher, or these two girls are crazy, I figured I'd watch them. But for others who are saying, I don't even know what this is, I need some help, there are going to be slides that are very wordy, and we're going to go through those together, but just to give everyone that basic understanding. Again, patience with the slides. So like I said, we're going to go for that basic understanding. We're going to define coping strategies, skills, and other related terms. And so when we look through these definitions, please know that this is one method of defining these terms. If you were to do more research online, there are different outlets and different organizations that may use different wording or may phrase things differently. But for the sake of these slides and this presentation, we're going to go with these definitions. And please know that it is very wordy, but at the end of the section, we are going to offer time for any questions to be asked. Again, if you are watching the recording and you are unable to ask questions through Zoom right now, please feel free at the end, jot down that email of Holly and send any of those questions that you have. So our first definition that we're going to go through is for coping strategy. And now this is described as an action, a series of actions, or a thought process used in meeting a stressful or unpleasant situation, or in modifying one's reaction to such a situation. Coping strategies typically involve a conscious and direct approach to problems. Now, before we go into each section, I'm going to go through the slides, read the definitions, and then as the presentation continues, we'll kind of dive deeper into these. So the next definition we're going to look at is for coping behaviors. And you will see as I present, sometimes I use these words as interchangeable. And if we're going technicalities, that might not be necessarily correct, but it's just the language that I'm using. And so it's important for me to at least define the differences, because sometimes I may say certain things and you'll be like, wait, I thought that was a strategy, not a behavior. And so let's take a look at this one. So it's a characteristic, an often action or set of actions taken in dealing with stressful or threatening situations. Coping behaviors can be both positive, which can be also known as adaptive. For example, taking time to meditate or exercise in the middle of a hectic day, or negative, which is also known as maladaptive or avoidant. For example, not consulting a doctor when symptoms of serious illness appear or persist. Coping mechanism is any conscious or non-conscious adjustment or adaptation that decreases tension and anxiety in a stressful experience or situation. So like in the beginning when we asked, have you ever used a coping strategy? And so for the individuals attending the Zoom session had said yes. for those of you who maybe said no in the recording, there are things that we do that we may not even be consciously aware of. And so one example of a coping strategy is deep breathing. You may not realize that's a coping strategy. You may naturally just take a deep breath when someone's bothering you or a situation's frustrating. And so it's important to know that we do things consciously and non-consciously or unconsciously. Maybe not unconscious. We don't want to do things unconscious. So the next definition is a skill. An ability or proficiency acquired through training and practice. And so this is a really basic definition. The reason why I say that is because we often say coping skills, or what skills do they have with regards to coping. And so it's good to have an idea of where we're going off of. And then a summary of all those terms is that coping strategies and skills are terms used to describe things we do to help us manage difficult times, experiences, and or emotions. So this time is open for any questions. If we do not have any questions in the Zoom, we'll just continue. But feel free to send any questions in the chat, and Elizabeth will be monitoring that. If at any point we go on in the presentation and you remember a question in the beginning, feel free to, any question is welcome. If you're watching the recording of this, again, please feel free to take down Holly's email at the end, which is listed in the slides, and I'll make sure to point that out when we go over that slide, and send any questions that you might have.
I think one of the comments and thoughts I had while you were talking, Chelsea, was just like how coping strategies are skills. So they take time, they take practice, and it doesn't come necessarily so easily. And it may take a lot of opportunities for an individual to learn that skill. And in our field, with the children that we work with, there's likely going to be some barriers, either with their behavior or their ability to have intra and interpersonal relationships. So when we're teaching coping strategies, it's important to remember how we're presenting opportunities, how many opportunities we're presenting, and in what situations, so that these kiddos that we work with, or if we're practicing them ourselves, are getting opportunities to build the skill, because that's a lot of what it is. And that's what I was thinking about when you were talking, Chelsea.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point, and I think that, you know, you really bring out, again, a good point, because some of our children and even some of our family members, their behaviors are different or not necessarily conducive to learning a skill right away, right? If we think about us, I don't learn something right off the bat. If I think about Zoom, my goodness, we've been doing it for a month and I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So it's important to have that patience with yourself when you're trying to learn a skill, and when you're teaching your children or your family those skills. Have that patience, because like Elizabeth said, it's not going to happen overnight. You may do it one time and you may forget another time. It's that practice. So great point, Elizabeth. So now we're going to talk about the different types of coping. And again, like I mentioned, the same with those definitions, there are many different types of coping. For this presentation, we're going to look at emotion focus and problem focus. You may, if you do want to do some research, you may see these terms called different things. So like problem focus, I've seen as solution focused. We just decided to go with these terms. And so we're going to start with the definition. So emotion focused coping is a stress management strategy in which a person focuses on regulating his or her negative emotional reactions to a stressor. Rather than taking actions to change the stressor itself, the individual tries to control feelings using a variety of cognitive and behavioral tools. So that's like a lot of information, especially if this is a new concept. So I feel like the next slide, in the way that I learn best, is give me those examples. And so when experiencing strong emotions that at times we can feel are beyond our ability to change, you can give yourself a pep talk, you can exercise, take a bath, meditate, take those deep breaths, do something that gets you back to that baseline. And so I have in parentheses pizza breathing, which is explained to me recently, so I'm going to do my best. And so when we think about some of our children, sometimes the concept of taking that deep breath or doing these um, emotion focused coping strategies can be hard. And so pizza breathing not only sounds delicious, but it's an easier concept to understand. And so the way it was described to me is that you could have a paper plate, or if you have a piece of paper, you draw a pizza. And so when you're explaining it, you can say, "Oh, yes, Elizabeth, yes." You can say it right there, right? And so it's so hot, right? And please correct me, Elizabeth, because it's a new concept for me. But so what you want to teach the kids is to be taking in those deep breaths and blowing out. And the same for us. If we can envision something that helps us take those deep breaths and blowing out. So you want to imagine that the pizza's hot, or I'm assuming you have to take a deep breath first. And so you're like, "Oh, this pizza is so delicious." You want to smell it, right? So you go,
Love pizza.
"Oh, I'm thinking about it. Oh, but the pizza's too hot. I can't eat it yet." And you blow it out. Now I hope we're all hungry. So
Oh,
it's just, yeah, it's giving kids, it's really just like Elizabeth said about those skills. It's meeting yourself where you're at and meeting kids where they're at. If your kid loves pizza, use pizza. If there's something else you or your children would benefit from, use that.
blowing candles and a cake.
Yes, anything that, it's funny because even when I work with teens, sometimes when I can see they're upset, I say, "Take a deep breath," and they kind of are like hyperventilating, and I'm like, "Whoa, you're gonna pass out on me." And so it's just teaching. And so breathing is a concept we think, oh, we all know it because we all do it, but to do it in a calming way is a skill that we all have to learn. And part of the reason why we're focusing on that emotion focused coping skills is especially because of the time we're in now. I think many of us feel like so much is out of our control. And in some sense, it is out of our control. We're being asked to stay home. That's a whole new concept for us. And so when we feel like we don't have control over a situation, I can speak for myself. I know my emotions spiral. I kind of go down a rabbit hole, and I have to do things, whether it's giving myself a pep talk and saying, "Chelsea, you got this, relax," or exercising. I am new to taking baths. I don't have the patience for them, so I'm learning how to relax. But yeah, so these are some examples. The next one we're going to look at is problem focused coping. And so, a stress management strategy in which a person directly confronts a stressor in an attempt to decrease or eliminate it. This may involve generating possible solutions to a problem, confronting others who are responsible for or otherwise associated with the stress, and other forms of instrumental action. So, again, we're going to take a look at some examples. So, this can look like asking for help or support, establishing healthy boundaries, working on managing time, and creating a to-do list. I know that I'll read the example at the bottom before I get into some more examples. But so an example that was provided online, which looks a little different now because our kids are not going to school. But an example of problem focused coping is if a student is nervous about an upcoming test, a way that they can cope by is studying more, attending every class, attending review sessions, asking for help. I know for me, sometimes, especially lately, working from home, I think that managing time and creating that to do list is the best way for me to try to manage that stress, because I think that it's an overwhelming sense of I have so much to do. I have to be at home. I have to take care of kids. I have to do this. I have to do that. And so for me, a to do list is very helpful to manage that stress, because then I don't have to keep it all in my brain. I just put it out on paper. For others, a to-do list can be very stressful, because then they can see that to-do list and think, "Oh my, I have so much to do." And so then it might be something else where asking for help or support, So I can think of another example. Elizabeth has been very helpful to me whenever I need help. And she, whether she can do it or not, she always provides at least that verbal support of, "I understand, let me see if I can help," or "I can do this." And it provides that relief for me.
I think too sometimes when we are having trouble sleeping during this time, having a notepad next to our bed in the nightstand, like on the nightstand, has been helpful with coping too, to write down my task that I need to do in the moment. So kind of like you're saying, Chelsea, just get it out of my head, because it can linger there for a while.
Yeah. I love that example too, because so often I can manage my stress well when I'm alert, and then as soon as I try to go to bed, I think of all the things that are worrying me, that are scaring me, that I have to do. And I think now is a very scary time for a lot of people. And so it's important. I think that actually might be helpful for me.
This PowerPoint will be available. Oh wait, you made it. Okay.
Yes. We all need coping strategies, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into some examples. And some of these examples are taken kind of from real life. Not they're no one that we know, but you might be able to relate to them, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm going to read through the scenario, and then Elizabeth is going to throw up a poll. And for those of you, again, who are on Zoom, I ask that you answer the poll the best of your ability. For those of you who are watching the recording, think about it. And the options in the poll are not the only options or ways that you can respond to this. So let's get to the first example. So what would you do? I don't know, I'm off topic, a rabbit hole. Elizabeth, do you ever watch that TV show, like, what would you do in those?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it might be a throwback of some sort, but
I think so.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Thank you. Anyway, so the first example. So due to COVID-19, your kids are now at home for the rest of the school year. Your children's school has given your kids one computer to use. Your son, James, has been using the computer for 2 hours, and your daughter, Brittany, wants to use it. James yells at Brittany to leave him alone, and in response, Brittany hits him in the face. After making sure everyone is safe, what healthy coping strategy could you use to help resolve this situation?
And you can answer multiple with this poll. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note for this and the next situation, and really for any situation, when there is any act of violence, or if there's any act of maybe self-harm or harm to others, address that safety concern first, and then we can incorporate some of these strategies.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a super great point, Chelsea, for sure. Safety is super, super important. I'm just going to let the poll just go for a few more seconds to get everyone's vote counted as possible, because I can see I don't see who voted because it's anonymous, like we said earlier, but I can see how many of our attendees have voted. So I just want to I'm just going to share it right now.
All right, so it looks like we kind of have all across the board, but the one that has won out is creating that computer schedule. Yeah. We have setting boundaries as next, deep breathing, and meditating are next. And I think that those are all great things. And again, for those of you who are watching that recording, you weren't able to answer, obviously, but there's that other section. There are more responses that we could have put on there, but that's awesome. So let me get the next slide. On that next slide, we're going to really break down those ones that are listed. I'm going to read through these sections, and again, it's a little wordy. So if any questions pop up, please send a question in the chat. Or again, if you're watching the recording at the end, you're going to get that email. Please feel free to ask any questions. And so when we look at deep breathing and counting to 10, we chose counting to 10, but it really can be any number that gives you that moment, that pause before responding. And so when we look at that section, it says, before responding, take a few deep breaths, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Allow your heart rate to slow down and give yourself a chance to think before responding out of anger or frustration or any of those strong emotions. Responding after getting a chance to calm down allows us to think more clearly and respond less out of our emotions and more from a thoughtful state of mind. And throughout this, we're going to give personal examples. And this is one that I have personally had to work on. I in my family, am known as dramatic. I like to think I just am passionate. So I often, if something upsets me, or if I'm feeling something very strong, whether it's happiness or anger, I'm likely to just blurt out what I think and feel. And in the past, that's gotten me in trouble, and it has had an impact on me emotionally because I see that I can hurt the people I care about with my words. And so by taking those deep breaths or counting or even asking and saying, if I say to my husband, I just need a moment, give me some time before I respond, because and he knows, he can see I'm very expressive, that okay, you need a second. So it's okay to take that time and do that.
Yeah, and if we're setting boundaries too, I would just say from the ABA side, from the behavioral side of things, if you are aware of your kid's function of behavior, or you are aware of the best strategies for both proactive and managing consequences, this is where you might utilize um, that consistency in setting boundaries with how you manage consequences and how you are proactively creating situations for certain environmental circumstances. And so when setting boundaries, it also helps create structure for your kids, and then expectations, which can help with coping too, because then they know kind of the expectation of how you will respond to certain behaviors as well.
I think that's a great point. And, the example of me asking my husband for time before I respond, that came with practice, because it wasn't just like, oh, he knows that I'm not mad or whatever. It came with practice. And again, it goes back to what Elizabeth was saying in the beginning. These are skills that we need to practice and we develop over time. And even once we know them, we may still do things that we know we shouldn't be doing, but we will continue to do that. So I think based on what. Oh,
Oh, sorry. And
no,
that was
that's okay. I think it would be great to I'll jump down to setting boundaries. So on the bottom right. So discuss with your children healthy boundaries. Go over the rules of the house. If there are no quote unquote house rules, think about creating some. Remind your children that we should never put our hands on others in harmful ways, and discuss other healthy ways of expressing extreme feelings. And so, to go off what Elizabeth says, if you know that your child or family member or whoever you want to put in that spot has certain behaviors or responds in certain situations, discuss these things ahead of time. Discuss them after an incident happens. Keep setting those boundaries and reminding them. And like Elizabeth said, consistency is key. Um, and so we'll continue creating a schedule. To avoid further disagreement, sit down and create a schedule for computer use. Once the schedule is completed, take the time to go over it with your kids. Kids like to have a role in things. By sharing it with them and allowing them to give feedback and or comments, it gives your kids a chance to be invested in the schedule. And so I know for some parents, they think, man, if I tell my kid or give them a chance for feedback, they're going to say something off the wall and it's unrealistic or it's unsafe or it's whatever. It's okay to provide opportunities for your children to provide input and feedback. And if it's not realistic for your family or if it's unsafe, it's okay to explain to them why you're not choosing that as an option. You can still acknowledge that they said it and acknowledge maybe their perspective where they're coming from, but it's okay to say no. It's healthy to say no. And then recharging. So after the incident and the following discussion, give yourself time to recharge. You can meditate, read, take a bath, exercise, do something that will help you release stress and get back to your emotional balance. And so these are just a few examples, but really whatever helps you relax. One thing I like to do, and we'll discuss later on, we won't discuss my love for paint, but we will discuss certain things. I love to paint. The things that come from my paintings are very abstract and very weird. But it took me time to realize it doesn't matter what it looks like, it helps me feel good. And so if I've had a hard day, I like to just unwind by painting because it gets me back to that emotional state. All right, we'll go on to the next what would you do? So this example, again, it's going to be similar to what Elizabeth and I did before. I'm going to read through it and then she's going to put up a poll. So you are typically very independent and social, but since our statewide stay-home order, you begin to feel depressed. You no longer feel like yourself and you have begun to have negative thoughts about life and yourself. You have been feeling strong emotions. What healthy coping strategy or strategies could you use to help in this situation? And so as Elizabeth puts that poll up, again, just like we said in the beginning of the other example, when it comes to safety, and whether that's your own safety or other safeties, it's important to meet that safety need first. And so I think that us being home, we've all experienced a range of emotions. If it got to a point where your life or someone else's life was in danger, you have to meet that safety need first.
For sure. And I think this is also a good opportunity to talk about a resource in our community, the 722 HELP number that's available to anyone in the community that would need some sort of crisis intervention for youth or stabilization. That number also is available for the adults and youth in our community as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so again, I can't see who voted, but I can see that we have 75% of our attendees have voted. So I'm just going to give a couple more seconds to give everyone the opportunity to. This is like kind of fun to be able to see these statistics. I'm like a data nerd, so I'm just like, yes, percentages. This is so cool. All right, I'm gonna end. Oh, someone just voted. I don't know who, but someone just did, and it changed everything. All right, 3, 2, 1, ending it.
All right, so it looks like our biggest one is connecting with friends and family. And then followed up, we have exercise, meditation, other. So I'm really interested, if you clicked other, please share in the chat so Elizabeth can read out what other things you would do in this situation. We'd love to hear that, and know that maybe something that you do could be something that someone watching the recording does, or it could be a helpful resource for that person.
I love watching TV personally.
Yes, yes. You know, I know they say sometimes
stuff like that, but that's a good activity for me to engage in.
I agree. I was gonna say, I know they say sometimes binge watching is not healthy. I'm not the judge of that, but I do like it.
They didn't invent Netflix then.
Yes. So I see some chats popping up.
Yeah. So get in the car. Mary Beth said, turn up the music. That's like really nice. Like especially in these times, like you don't even realize sometimes how much you miss the radio. I mean, yes. We can listen to the radio in our home, you know, over the whatever we have, like phone or computer or whatever, but to be able to like get in the car and just drive and listen to the radio or your favorite. I have CDs still. That's where I'm.
That's cool.
You know, just like turning on that music is super, super awesome. We have taking doggy for a walk.
That's good.
Yes, exercise and the dog is so happy at the same time. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah. Getting that fresh air.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I like that a lot. I see some more popping, so I'll read and then we'll touch back on the chats. Does that sound good?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so awesome. So for asking for help, so we all need help at some time in our lives. It can be hard to ask for help when you may typically be an independent person. However, when something in our lives change, we need to make the necessary adjustments. So it's helpful to identify people in your family, your friends, your community that you can ask for help and support from. And then don't view asking for help as a weakness. It's a strength. I think that some of us get hung up on that. I know even, you know, if I just think about work, not knowing how to do certain things, it can feel uncomfortable asking. You don't want people to be upset. You don't want to take someone's time. But the truth of it is that people care about you. And so by identifying those people in your life that you can go to, it also affirms that those people care about you and that they would be willing to take some time out of their day to help if you needed it. I think the next one is important, exercise. So it's important to note that's either physical and or mental. And so I know there are individuals who cannot physically do certain things. And so whether that's by choice or by necessity. So for me, if you ask me to run a marathon, it ain't happening. That's not going to go. But it's important to know that exercise is not only about the physical, it's about the mental. So take time to take care of your mind, body, and soul. Exercise has been proven to improve mood. If you are unable to exercise, take time to exercise your mind. Reading, meditating, guided breathing, puzzles, listening to music can help our minds relax. So Mary Beth saying that she goes into the car and listening to that music, I'm envisioning her blaring out some lyrics and rocking.
You're just blowing in the wind.
Yes, very fabulous.
Yes, very definitely.
But that's good. I mean, it's such an important thing, and I think Elizabeth, you saying like we don't realize that we miss things. I put on music the other day, and I was like, I haven't listened to music in forever. It was a good experience. Um, some other are connecting with family and friends. So being ordered to stay home is challenging, but there are ways we can still connect with others. We can write letters, make phone calls, video chat, email, and text are all ways that we can stay connected. I know that some of these methods of communication can make us very uncomfortable. I've never had to be so aware of what my face looks like when I speak to others until Zoom. And so sometimes it can put us outside our comfort zone, but it's important to know to still stay connected. It's important to still reach out to those people that you normally did. And if you're an individual who feels like they cannot identify someone in their life, whether it's friends, family, neighbors, I think that's a great opportunity again to ask for help. Here at Health West, we are actively seeking opportunities to be a resource in the community. And so whether it's jotting down that email of Holly's, I see Holly is on here and I've been throwing out her email out there, so heads up. Or
She
if
loves
it's,
to help. I know she loves to help, so would welcome it.
but it's important, and you know, even knowing that it's hard to identify people that we can go to, that can be very stressful. And so again, it's having that patience with yourself and using those strategies. And then positive self-talk. So this is a little blurb about it, but in the slides to come, we're going to go a little deeper into that. So with positive self-talk, when you're experiencing negative thoughts or emotions, try using positive self-talk. For example, if you're thinking, I'm all alone or no one cares about me, when thoughts like this arise, tell yourself the truth. You might be in your house, but you are not alone. You have friends and family who care about you. You have pets that need you. It takes practice, but positive self talk helps us shine a light on those dark thoughts. And for me, you know, if many of you don't know me, I am a crazy cat lady. I prefer cats, and I guess that's all you have to say. I feel like when you say crazy cat lady, a lot is already understood. But for me, it's so enlightening to see how much joy and comfort I get from just cuddling my cats or just knowing that they need me to take care of them. So when I'm feeling down, I even if you know if I did not have other people in my life, I still have my cats. And I think that that's such an important thing. And you know, maybe it's because I'm a crazy cat lady. I view them as family.
Yeah,
Um,
of course. Pets are definitely so important. They are. They really are for sure.
Now, before I go on, I saw a few other chats. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you would like to share?
So people were talking about puzzles, playing games, reading, drawing, coloring. Music is, a fan favorite. Just those types of activities being things that you can engage in as well to help.
Yeah. And I know Elizabeth, in a previous conversation you brought up that um, it's hard when we're all isolated in one house, and it's hard when we have all different interests. So if your interest is music and your kids maybe isn't, this could be a great opportunity for you to share music that you like that and educate them on those songs. I know there are songs that I have that are my favorite that I would not know if my parents didn't share with me. Or art. I know I keep trying to get my husband to paint with me. It's a solid no right now, but we're working on it. But try to share those things that you enjoy with other people. But also understand that some people aren't into it. So like I know my husband isn't into painting, even though I keep pushing it. But those are great things. Yes. So then this next section, I am going to read through one column first, and then I'm going to go over to the positive thinking column. And so when you look at the slide, it's titled What Sounds and Feels Better. And so while I'm reading these things, I just want you to think about not only which side are you more prone to thinking. So are you more prone to that negative self-talk, or are you more on that positive thinking? Are you kind of in the middle? And then where would you like to be? I know there are often times I'm in that negative self-talk, but I'd love to be in that positive. And so when I read these out, they are numbered. So number one on the negative self-talk matches up to the positive thinking. For me, I just think that to really get that image, I'm going to do the left side, then the right side. So for the negative self-talk, so I've never done this before. It's too complicated. I don't have the resources. I'm too lazy to get this done. There's no way it will work. It's too radical a change. No one bothers to communicate with me, and I'm not going to get any better at this. And so I know for me, I've had thoughts like that. I'm sure many of us have. And so when we now go over to that positive thinking, again, it matches up by numbers, but it's an opportunity to learn something new. I'll tackle it from a different angle. Necessity is the mother of invention. I wasn't able to fit it into my schedule, but I can re examine some priorities. I can try to make it work. Let's take a chance. I'll see if I can open the channels of communication and I'll give it another try. And so, if you'd like to share in the chat, which side feels better? Which side do we not only feel like we're supporting ourselves, but we're putting a positive, we're putting a good step forward. And I mean, if you'd like to share, which side do you feel like you're most on? Like I said, I think that it's taking me time to be more on that positive thinking. But my natural reaction is to be on that negative side. So it takes me time to have those positive thoughts. I know Elizabeth and I have had conversations. If I'm talking about someone else, oh, I am so supportive and positive. But once I look on the inside, that's where that negative self-talk comes. So it's okay to be on both sides. For me in my life, I want to know, how do I get consistently on that positive side?
Yeah,
Um,
I think it takes time and a lot of practice. And you're right, like we can be our own worst critic sometimes. And when we're practicing those skills of positive self-talk, we have to say what, like you said earlier, Chelsea, what is the truth? What are the facts? And by asking ourselves that question when we are engaging in that negative self-talk, which is sometimes very natural to who we can be as a person. We have a lot of professionals in this Zoom with us, and I know as professionals we take on a lot for our clients and feeling like we need to have all the answers for our clients and their families, especially during this time where we don't really have a lot of answers or for sure's. So I think it's important in this time to really help ourselves and practice these coping skills of asking us, what is the truth? What are the facts for myself? I've never done this before. Yeah, that may be so, and that may be a fact too. It's also, the fact is, this is an opportunity to learn something new. And so it's okay to validate yourself, to be like, yes, I am feeling this and I'm holding this with my hand open. And then I'm also going to um, think of a way that I can speak to what the actual truth is in the matter as well.
yeah, I really like that, Elizabeth. And I think one thing that came to my mind when you were talking again goes back to, for those of us who have trouble identifying supports in our lives, or for those of us who have trouble seeing that truth, those are those opportunities, if you can, um, rely on others who are positive in your life. So, there are often times where I feel like I don't know what I'm doing in this job. And so far, I've been able to rely on Elizabeth to say, okay, can you guide me? And others as well. And so, you know, again, I can't stress enough, have patience with yourself. Because Elizabeth and I shared, we can have patience with other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we're a little more hard. So,
You're gonna be that Yoda guy.
yes.
Well, yeah.
So at this time, we'll give like a minute or more if needed. If there are any questions for those of you who are on Zoom, please feel free to put that in the chat. If you're watching this on the recording, I know I keep repeating this, but I am one of those people who need directions repeated often. And so at the end of this presentation, we will have the email to Holly. And if you have any questions about this information, you can ask.
Yeah, so a comment in the chat that is, really great that was made was by Mary Beth when it says, when you reach out for help, that is often a lift for the person you ask for help from. So just like knowing that reaching out can be a really great tool to help someone else too.
I really like that point because, when I think about when someone has come to advice from me, or has needed something from me, man, I feel like a rock star. I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Like, yes. And so that's such a great point that not only are you getting the help you might need, but you are also making someone else's day, and you may improve a day that was bad for them. So that's a great point.
For sure.
Okay, so there are numerous benefits to using healthy coping strategies. And so we're going to take a look at a few of them. Again, these are not the only benefits, but they are some. And so they help us make healthier decisions. And so going back, I can think of the example of counting to 10 or taking a deep breath before responding. That helps me make a healthier decision before I say something out of anger or out of frustration. It helps us express our thoughts and emotions in healthier ways. Again, if I give myself that time to deep breath, I'm not mad at the person, I'm frustrated by the situation, I can respond in a more loving and caring way than saying something that I think will make me feel better. And in the end, it helps me express truly how I feel in a more accurate way. It helps to lower stress, and it provides us with that mental health relief, especially during this time where so many of us are feeling just an overwhelming sense of stress and so much uncertainty. Like Elizabeth was saying, we have so much uncertainty right now. These strategies, and you find the ones that really speak to you the most, can help you um, relax a little bit. It can help you de-stress. It can help you communicate better with your family. It can just help you in so many different ways. Um, like I had mentioned, we're going to be touching a little more on the positive thinking. And so these strategies that are listed on this slide are from the Mayo Clinic, and they have found that implementing positive thinking, so just switching instead of, again, saying, oh, I don't know how to do that, you can say, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to ask. I'm going to try to find out. They have found that it increases lifespan. It lowers rates of depression. It lowers levels of distress. You have better psychological and physical well-being, and you have better coping skills during hardships and times of stress. And so for those of us who have trouble implementing coping strategies, or if this is a new concept, what a trying time to start to learn how to implement healthy coping strategies during a very stressful time in our society, in our lives, right? But I can't stress enough, just like what Elizabeth said, these are skills. It takes time to learn them. It takes practice. It takes patience. So then we're looking at that big picture. So we're going to touch on self-care, who are coping strategies for, and what to do next. So self-care, this image I thought was really, it kind of spoke to me, so I thought it'd be beneficial to share. So self-care means giving the world the best of you instead of what is left of you. And I can speak to I feel not just professionals, but for those of us who are on the Zoom, I know that sometimes we have so much on our plate. By the time we get to our families, or we get to our children, or we get to our cats, we do get to whatever is important to us, right? That support system. We are either frustrated, we're drained, we're tired, we're angry, we feel empty. And so it's important to know that in order to give the best to others, we have to take care of ourselves. And so on the other side, it's just some notes that it's important to hear. We may know these things, but again, it's important to hear this, that you are just as important as your kids, or as your family, or your responsibilities in your to-do list. I know that those are all very can be stress-inducing items, your family, your kids, the situation, but you are equally as important. And again, for you to be able to take care of your family and your needs, you have to take care of yourself first. Um, and then by taking care of yourself, you can model to your families and friends how to take care of themselves. And so when we think about our children who have very high behaviors or who have different abilities, we need to know that they look to us not only for consistency, for structure, but they look to us to see how we respond. And in saying that, you know what? It's natural to have those days where something happens. If we go back to that example, Brittany hitting, I think, James or Josh in the face for the computer, our initial response may be to yell and scream. Unintentionally, we are showing and modeling to our children that's an appropriate response. And so if we do have that response that is maybe quote unquote unhealthy, we can take the time and say to our kids, I responded this way, I should have responded this way. Let's learn from this, right? And so it's important to know that um, you can be that example to your families and to your kids.
Yeah, and I think that it's just an important, real quick note that, every opportunity is an opportunity to reset. So if there was an instance that you as a caregiver, as a parent, as a professional, maybe did not respond in the way that you want to model, I think it's so powerful, like Chelsea is saying, to apologize, if needed, sometimes even to your kids, be like, I'm sorry, I messed up there. And that can be a really powerful tool of modeling as well.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, what you said is so right. And I think this also goes back to asking for help. Apologizing, is not a weakness. We often want our children to apologize when they maybe make a mistake or do something that they shouldn't have. Again, we need to model to them opportunities. And I think it's so important what Elizabeth said about hitting that reset button, that every opportunity is a reset. We can learn and we'll make mistakes. I'm sure I'm going to continue to make mistakes when it comes to my coping strategies in my responses to certain things. But again, it's that patience and it's that forgiveness for yourself and others. So when you see this meme, I'm getting off topic down a rabbit hole. There was an episode of Oprah where she essentially gave out cars to everyone. And she's like, you get a car, you get a car. When you see this, I want you to envision Oprah yelling at you. Unfortunately, it's not free cars, but coping strategies are for everyone. And so these are for professionals, for parents, for people who have their doctorate, for people who I'm trying to think.
Completed kindergarten.
Yes, every single person. And that is such a good point, Elizabeth, that this is so important for our children to have these skills and to be taught these skills because as they grow, it will just become second nature to them. And so, like this slide says, everyone can use and benefit from implementing healthy coping strategies. And we are all human. We all have frustrating days. We all have those days where we look back and say, I should have handled that differently. But again, those are learning opportunities. And so each time I try to view, I'm a work in progress, but every time I make a mistake, I try to think, okay, I'm going to try not to do that again, but it's a learning opportunity. And so when I have an opportunity to use a coping strategy and I choose not to, or I choose one that's unhealthy, it's an opportunity to reflect on that. So what to do next? There are many, many different things you can do. These are just some of them. And so we'll take a look. And again, we're going to use personal examples. Feel free in the chat if you'd like to throw out some ideas that you have. I know that some people have already said things that are on this page, but we'd love your input. And so identify areas to change. So identifying areas of your life that you usually think negative about. And so for me, I think an area of change is that self-talk, that self-forgiveness, the patience for myself. And check yourself. During the day, stop and evaluate what you're thinking. I am now in the steps in the journey of trying to stop my thought. I often can go down rabbit holes that can be kind of negative. And so in my head, I'm a little more honest with myself. I'll be like, cut that out. Like, what are you doing? Why are you thinking this? But just to see where your thought process is leading. If you have something in your life that typically stresses you out, checking yourself during the day. If you're feeling high anxiety, if you're feeling stressed, or if you're feeling frustrated, check yourself to see what's causing that. And then that could be a schedule change. That could be implementing something in your life to reduce that. Humor, smiling, laughing, and seeking out humor in everyday tasks. I think that's whether you are listening to something funny, reading something funny, watching a comedy show, or being able to kind of laugh at yourself. There are so many times I do something, or one thing that's embarrassing, but we're having an honest time, so I'll share. I make some crazy faces, and I'll like approach my husband with crazy faces, and he'll be like, "Don't move, look in the mirror." And I'll look at these faces that I make, and they're so disturbing, but I find the humor in it because it's hilarious. But just realizing that laughter is so important. So visualization. So an example of this could be drawing a picture of how your day went. It could be something like painting after a stressful day. It can be um, in your mind, maybe closing your eyes and just thinking about what happened in your day. Again, practice that deep breathing, that mindfulness. We're going to go through some resources. Mindfulness can be very challenging for people because our minds wander. It goes back to those things that stress us. It's almost as if when we're falling asleep, we think about all the things that bother us, right? And so mindfulness can be challenging, but there are resources out there that can provide you with guided mindfulness and guided meditation to help you with that. We'll discuss some of those later on. And surrounding yourself with positive people. This is so important. But this COVID 19 presents some challenges with that. So the question when I read this comes to what happens if my family is not positive? What happens if my family were on that negative thinking side? And that can be very challenging for people, especially if you're stuck inside all day and you're around people who are more negative, or maybe their behaviors aren't negative, but if for some reason we respond negatively towards that or towards them. Those are those moments where we go back to checking yourself or identifying those areas to change. And we go back to that more of that emotional focused coping. We may not have control over who our family is, but can try to have control over how we respond to those individuals. That can be challenging for people. For others, the positive people, like with the communication, try to connect with people, text, email, Zoom, Skype, whatever, just to get some type of positive in there. Healthy living. So trying to eat healthy and exercising. Again, that can be very challenging. Myself included, many of us are stress eaters. I'm also an emotional eater. So I'm happy, sad, angry, or whatever. I just want to eat. And so that can be very challenging to live a healthy life because I know after I eat whatever I want to, sometimes I feel like garbage. And so it's that balance, right? And at the same time, again, having that patience with yourself, having the forgiveness. I know sometimes I shouldn't eat a bag of chips or I shouldn't have whatever. But forgiving yourself to say, all right, I'm going to try to do better next time. Um, so positive self-talk, again, we touch on this a lot, but be gentle and encouraging with yourself. If a negative thought enters your mind, evaluate it rationally, respond with affirmations of what is good about you. And then include your family in activities that you like to do. So like we mentioned before, so listening to music, cooking, exercise. The important thing to do with all of these things when we look at next steps is to be mindful of. So if we're looking at working with your children, what is age appropriate? So if it's not age appropriate for your child to be cooking with you, don't have them cooking with you. Um, if your favorite music is maybe not inappropriate for your children to hear, maybe play different songs. And then also be mindful of the behaviors or the different abilities that your children and your family members have, meeting them at their level, right? We don't want, again, so a very lame example, but a marathon. I'm nowhere ready to run a marathon. I don't want to run a marathon. If you want me to run a marathon, we're going to have an issue. So meet your children where you're at. Meeting me where I'm at is probably like, let's go for a walk. Yes. So any questions or comments at this time? I know it's a lot of information and it's a lot of personal information, so I don't want to get bogged down in my crazy stories. And then again, another reminder, if you're watching the recording at the end, I will point out the email that you can contact. If for some reason you are having trouble with that, please feel free to go onto the Health West website. There are many resources on there.
Yeah, and I would say we have about, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have about a minute left, but we're just going to go over the resources next. So Chelsea has some great things for you guys to look at. And as you'll see, going through these at the end, we're going to find a way to get this PowerPoint available to the people that attended. And access through the Health West Facebook page, I would just keep that as the also a point of reference for you as well.
Perfect. And I thank you for that time check. So these resources are somewhat similar, so I'm just going to run through them. The first one is the Mindful You. And so if you were to follow this link or copy and paste it, they're offering mindfulness lessons for kids ages 4 to 14 years old. Currently, free enrollment up until May 1st. And each session is about 30 minutes. For each resource that we provide, please note that more information would be provided to you when you follow those links. The next one is Calm. Some people have this app on their phone, but it is a website you can also access. They offer resources that some are for cost and some are also free, which include but are not limited to, so mindful living calendars, daily gratitude journals, fitness, mental fitness training, calm intention cards, little videos about sleep. They have music and meditation. So it's also, for those of you who are looking for guided meditation, that could be a helpful resource. Another one very similar to Calm is Headspace. And so on their website, they are offering free support during that pandemic. It would be important for you to follow that link to find out specifically what meets your needs and whether that is within their free support or for cost. But Headspace teaches mindfulness with guided exercises and videos. And then one resource, and it's so very simple, just Googling what resources could I use, and the CDC pops up. And so the Center for Disease Control Prevention, they have a link, and if you go to this specific link that is listed, they discuss how to manage stress during this COVID pandemic. I know that with a lot of people, there's so much information out there, so they also may be a good resource for you if you're looking for more information beyond coping skills. So Health West, this is a part of our parent educational series. And so the next two topics are going to be visual supports and functional communication training. Now that email that I kept talking about, kept dropping hints about, is right here at the bottom. Holly Hawkins. Again, like Elizabeth said, this presentation will be made available in different formats. But check in to that Health West Facebook page as well.
And in the chat, I linked all of the things from your PowerPoint, Chelsea, so that you can just copy from the chat.
Perfect.
Them into either a Word document to save for later or an email or something like that for yourself, just so that you can do that.
Perfect.
And then I'll type in Holly's email as well.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That was a lot of information, and as you can see, Elizabeth and I, maybe mostly me, love to chat. But if any questions come up, or if you're looking for more in-depth information about coping strategies, please feel free to reach out. Again, this is just a basic understanding to give us all kind of a foundation.
Yep, and I would say stay tuned to the Health West Facebook page for more supports in the community and more reminders about this webinar series or telehealth series, along with all the other community programs that are provided during this time. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And your leadership during this time. And I hope everyone has a great night.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.
Goodbye, everyone.